She walked onto the first-class cabin wearing a dark gray sweatshirt and sweatpants, but they humiliated her and forced her to leave. They had no idea her billionaire husband owned the entire airline. And what happened next left everyone speechless. The morning sun streamed through the expansive windows of Denver International Airport as Sophia Carter made her way through the bustling terminal. At 34, she moved with quiet confidence, her blonde hair tucked under a black cap, her athletic frame dressed in a comfortable dark gray sweatshirt and light gray sweatpants. A simple silver bracelet on her wrist was her only accessory. To the casual observer, she looked like any other traveler prioritizing comfort over style for a long flight. No one would guess that she was married to Nathan Carter, the billionaire tech innovator who had recently acquired Summit Airlines as part of his growing transportation empire. Sophia checked her watch, a modest timepiece that had belonged to her grandmother. She had plenty of time before boarding began for Flight 782 to Boston, where her parents were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. Nathan had offered their private jet, but Sophia preferred flying commercial occasionally. It kept her connected to the real world in ways that wealth often insulated people from. "Just a regular black coffee, please," she told the barista at the terminal cafe, fishing cash from her pocket rather than using the platinum card tucked away in her phone case. The young man behind the counter smiled. "Heading somewhere nice?" "Boston. Family celebration," Sophia replied, dropping her change in the tip jar. "Well, have a great flight." Coffee in hand, Sophia made her way to Gate A22. Her eyes lingered on the family sitting together, elderly couples holding hands, business travelers typing furiously on laptops. This diverse tapestry of humanity fascinated her, perhaps because she'd grown up in a modest household in rural Colorado before meeting Nathan at a tech conference where she'd been presenting her environmental research. "Now boarding our first-class passengers for Summit Airlines Flight 782 to Boston," announced the gate agent. Sophia gathered her simple carry-on, a well-worn backpack rather than designer luggage, and joined the short line forming at the priority boarding lane. A businessman in an expensive suit glanced at her casual attire, then did a subtle double-take. Sophia was used to these looks. They no longer bothered her. "Boarding pass, please," said the gate agent, a practiced smile on her face. Sophia handed over her phone displaying the digital boarding pass. The agent scanned it, and her smile faltered just slightly as she looked between the first-class designation and Sophia's casual appearance. "Thank you, Miss Carter. Enjoy your flight." Sophia nodded and walked down the jet bridge, unaware that her decision to dress comfortably today would soon create a storm that would change Summit Airlines forever. The first-class cabin of Summit Airlines Flight 782 gleamed with luxury, wide leather seats, deep navy blue accents, and polished wood trim. An attentive flight attendant served pre-departure champagne as Sophia stepped aboard. Flight attendant Megan Foster looked up, her practiced smile freezing slightly at the sight of the casually dressed woman. "Good morning," Sophia said warmly, glancing at her boarding pass. "Seat 2A, by the window." Megan's perfectly penciled eyebrows arched slightly. "First class is to your left," she said, her tone carrying a hint of doubt. "Yes, I know." "Thank you." Sophia moved confidently toward her assigned seat, aware of Megan's eyes following her. The first-class cabin was half full with passengers who fit the expected mold. Men in business suits, a woman in an elegant dress, a celebrity chef Sophia recognized from television. She stowed her backpack in the overhead compartment and settled into her seat, pulling out a dog-eared paperback rather than the latest electronic device. "Excuse me." A male flight attendant named Daniel appeared at her side, his voice low but firm. "May I see your boarding pass?" Sophia looked up, meeting his skeptical gaze. "Of course." She pulled up the digital pass on her phone again. Daniel scrutinized it longer than necessary, glancing between the screen and Sophia's casual attire. "One moment, please." She watched as he conferred with Megan and Victoria Hayes, the lead flight attendant, whose name badge indicated her supervisory status. All three stole glances in her direction. The businessman across the aisle pretended not to notice, but his attention was obvious. Sophia took a deep breath, recognizing the familiar signs of judgment forming. Victoria approached, her voice professionally modulated but cool. Ma'am, there seems to be some confusion with your boarding pass. Sophia set her book down. There's no confusion. I'm in 2A, first class. Victoria's smile tightened. Our system occasionally makes errors. This is a first-class cabin, and you don't think I belong here, Sophia finished, her voice calm but direct. Is that what you're suggesting? A flicker of discomfort crossed Victoria's face. Not at all. We simply need to verify. You've already verified my boarding pass twice, Sophia pointed out. It clearly shows I'm assigned to this seat. By now, the other first-class passengers were watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Daniel stood nearby, arms crossed, his expression suggesting he'd encountered this situation before and knew how it would end. Perhaps you were upgraded accidentally, Megan suggested, her tone making it clear how unlikely she considered this possibility. Perhaps I purchased a first-class ticket, Sophia countered. Is there a dress code for this cabin that I'm unaware of? Victoria's professional veneer slipped just slightly. No official dress code, but our first-class passengers typically present themselves in a manner that reflects the premium experience. I see, Sophia said, her voice steady. So it's not about the ticket I purchased, but rather how I look. A distinguished older gentleman across the aisle cleared his throat. I've flown in sweatpants in first class many times. No one's ever questioned my right to be here. Victoria flushed. Sir, this is between our staff and the passenger. It shouldn't be happening at all, he replied, but then returned to his newspaper. Megan leaned closer to Victoria, whispering something. Victoria nodded and turned back to Sophia. Ma'am, we have a full flight today, and we need to ensure all passengers are in their correct assigned seats. Our system shows this seat should be occupied by an escorter. That's correct, Sophia said. Sophia Carter. Do you have identification to verify that? Daniel asked, his tone suggesting he'd caught her in a lie. Sophia maintained her composure, though her patience was wearing thin. You've never asked any other passenger to prove their identity after boarding. The gate agent verified my boarding pass. It's standard procedure when there are discrepancies, Victoria insisted. What discrepancies? Besides the fact that I'm not dressed the way you think I should be, the tension in the cabin was palpable. Other passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One woman whispered to her companion, loud enough for Sophia to hear, "If she bought the ticket, what's the problem?" Victoria's expression hardened. Ma'am, if you cannot verify your identity, we'll need to reassign you to an economy seat. Sophia sat straighter. I can verify my identity, but I shouldn't have to. No one else in this cabin has been asked to do so. Miss Carter, if that's who you are, Daniel said with barely concealed condescension, we're simply following protocol. No, Sophia replied firmly. You're following your biases. If I were wearing pearls and a designer outfit, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Victoria's professional smile vanished entirely. This is becoming disruptive. Either show identification, or we'll need to move you to economy. Sophia noticed the other passengers watching, some with sympathy, others with detached amusement. She could end this instantly by revealing who her husband was, but that wasn't how Sophia navigated the world. This is discrimination, she stated clearly. I purchased this ticket like everyone else. Ma'am, Victoria's voice turned frosty, we need to complete boarding. Your options are to verify your identity, move to economy, or deplane. The injustice of the situation burned, but Sophia recognized the impossible position. Making a scene would only delay the flight for everyone. Fine, she said finally. I'll move. But I want your names and employee numbers. This isn't over. Daniel smirked slightly. We'll find you a seat in economy and provide compensation for the fare difference. I don't want compensation, Sophia replied, gathering her backpack. I want accountability. As she stood, she noticed the sympathetic glances from a few passengers, while others studiously avoided eye contact. The older gentleman who had spoken up earlier shook his head in disgust. With an escort that felt more like an expulsion, Megan led Sophia through the premium cabin toward economy. Passengers in business class watched curiously as she passed, hushed whispers following in her wake. Sophia held her head high, refusing to show how deeply the humiliation cut. Here you are, Megan said, gesturing to a middle seat in economy. We apologize for any inconvenience. Sophia looked her directly in the eyes. No, you don't. But you might soon enough. The following morning dawned bright over the Summit Airlines corporate headquarters in Denver. In the executive suite, Chief Customer Officer Patricia Winters reviewed the day's agenda with growing anxiety. The quarterly customer experience review was scheduled for 10 a.m., and the numbers weren't promising. Passenger complaints had increased by 11% over the previous quarter, with issues regarding staff attitude topping the list. The board members will be attending, her assistant reminded her, and Mr. Carter has confirmed he'll be joining in person rather than virtually. Patricia's stomach tightened. Nathan Carter had acquired Summit Airlines 9 months ago, but today would mark his first appearance at a quarterly review. His reputation for demanding excellence was legendary, as was his limited tolerance for excuses. Make sure Victoria Hayes and her first-class cabin crew are here, Patricia instructed. They've maintained the highest customer satisfaction scores. We need some positive examples to highlight. Meanwhile, across town, Nathan Carter adjusted his tie in the mirror of their spacious penthouse. At 38, he carried himself with the natural authority of someone accustomed to success. His tailored navy suit and crisp white shirt projected power without ostentation. Are you sure you don't want me to say something directly to the flight attendants? He asked, watching Sophia's reflection as she sat on the edge of their bed. Sophia shook her head. This isn't about personal revenge, Nathan. It's about changing a culture. They humiliated my wife, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. That's pretty personal to me. Sophia stood and straightened his tie, though it needed no adjustment. And I love you for that, but this is bigger than me or those 3 crew members. This is about a system that judges people based on appearances rather than character. Nathan's expression softened as he looked at his wife. Sophia had maintained her groundedness, despite the wealth that surrounded her. Now it was one of the countless reasons he'd fallen in love with her. She saw the world without the distortion of privilege. All right, he agreed. We'll do it your way. He checked his watch. The meeting starts in an hour. You're sure about the timing? Sophia nodded. Absolutely sure. And I'll be wearing exactly what I wore yesterday. At Summit Airlines headquarters, the executive conference room filled with board members, department heads, and key staff. Victoria Hayes, Daniel, and Megan sat together near the back, surprised by the invitation but assuming it was related to their high-performance metrics. Maybe they're finally creating that elite service team, Daniel whispered to Megan. We'd be the obvious choice to lead it. Megan nodded, smoothing her perfectly pressed uniform. I heard the new owner is attending. This could be a big opportunity. Victoria shushed them as Patricia Winters called the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here today, Patricia began. As you know, customer experience is the cornerstone of our brand promise at Summit Airlines. Today, we'll review our quarterly performance metrics and discuss strategies for improvement. The room quieted as the door opened and Nathan Carter entered, tall, commanding, and radiating quiet confidence. Mr. Carter, Patricia said, we're honored to have you join us today. Nathan nodded and took a seat at the head of the table. Please continue. The presentation began with slides showing various metrics. Patricia highlighted positives while carefully framing areas of concern. Nathan listened without expression, occasionally making notes. Now, I'd like to call attention to our bright spots, Patricia said, her voice gaining enthusiasm. Our first-class service has maintained a 92% satisfaction rating, well above industry average. We have members of that team here today. She gestured toward Victoria, Daniel, and Megan. Nathan looked at them for the first time, his gaze revealing nothing. In fact, Patricia continued, I've asked Victoria Hayes, our senior first-class cabin manager, to share insights about their approach to premium service. Victoria stood confidently and moved to the front of the room. Thank you, Patricia. At Summit Airlines, we believe the first-class experience begins the moment passengers step on board. We're trained to recognize and accommodate the needs of our premium travelers who expect and deserve a certain level of service. The door to the conference room opened quietly. We carefully attend to every detail, Victoria continued, not noticing the new arrival, from how we address passengers to ensuring the first-class cabin maintains its exclusive atmosphere. Her words faltered as she noticed Nathan Carter's attention had shifted. Victoria turned, and there, standing just inside the doorway, was the woman in the dark gray sweatshirt, light gray sweatpants, and black cap from yesterday's flight. For a moment, Victoria didn't process what she was seeing. Then recognition dawned, followed swiftly by confusion. Daniel and Megan exchanged alarmed glances as they too recognized yesterday's misplaced passenger. Nathan stood. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "I believe some of you have already met my wife, Sophia Carter." The conference room froze in shock. Victoria stood at the podium, her professional composure cracking. Daniel and Megan seemed to shrink in their seats, faces draining of color. Executives and board members looked between Nathan, Sophia, and the flight attendants, piecing together the unfolding drama. "Your wife?" Patricia finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Nathan confirmed, his tone deceptively casual. "Sophia flew from Denver to Boston yesterday on our airline, in first class." Each phrase fell like a hammer. Sophia moved to stand beside her husband, still dressed in the exact outfit that had deemed her unworthy of a seat she'd paid for. Perhaps Victoria was about to explain Summit Airlines' approach to recognizing premium travelers? Nathan suggested. "Please continue." Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No words emerged. "I... we... there must have been a misunderstanding," she finally stammered. "A misunderstanding," Nathan repeated thoughtfully. Interesting choice of words. "Sophia, would you characterize yesterday's incident as a misunderstanding?" Sophia stepped forward. Unlike Nathan, whose controlled anger simmered beneath a professional exterior, she projected calm purpose. "What happened yesterday wasn't a misunderstanding," she said, her voice clear. "It was bias in action. I was judged not by my boarding pass, which was checked multiple times, but by my appearance." She looked directly at Victoria, Daniel, and Megan. "You decided I didn't belong in first class because I didn't match your image of who deserves to be there. You questioned my identity, something you did for no other passenger. You threatened me with removal from the flight, and ultimately, you humiliated me by marching me back to economy in front of a full plane of onlookers." A board member cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mr. Carter, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," Nathan interrupted firmly. "This is precisely what this customer experience meeting should address. But let's be clear, I'm not here as an angry husband, though I certainly am one." His gaze swept the room. "I'm here as the owner of this airline, deeply concerned about a culture that judges people based on appearances rather than treating all customers with equal respect." Patricia Winters looked stricken. "Mr. Carter, I assure you, this incident doesn't reflect our company policies." "Doesn't it?" Sophia interjected gently. "Because when I spoke with other flight attendants and airport staff after the incident, I heard numerous similar stories." She placed a folder on the conference table. 27 documented incidents in the past 3 months alone, all following the same pattern. A teenager in a hoodie with a business class ticket questioned repeatedly. A disabled passenger assumed to be in the wrong line. An elderly woman in casual clothes redirected from the first-class lounge despite having valid access. She paused. "This isn't about 3 flight attendants. It's about a culture." The revelation hit the room like a physical force. Patricia reached for the folder with trembling hands. "I had no idea," she whispered. "That's the problem," Nathan stated. "You should have known. These incidents were reported but classified as customer misunderstandings and buried in your feedback system." Victoria finally recovered enough to attempt damage control. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she began, her voice professionally contrite, "on behalf of our team, I offer my deepest apologies for yesterday's incident. There are protocols we're expected to follow regarding verification." "Stop," Sophia said quietly but firmly. "You're still not understanding. This isn't about protocols. When the businessman in 2C wore sweatpants in first class last month, did you ask for his ID? When the famous actress in 1A boarded in sunglasses and a baseball cap, did you question her right to be there?" She locked eyes with Victoria. "The protocol isn't the problem. The selective application of it is." Daniel, sensing his career circling the drain, attempted to interject. "Mrs. Carter, there was no way for us to know who you were." "That's exactly the point," Sophia replied. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with basic dignity. My worth as a passenger isn't determined by my marriage, my bank account, or my clothes. I purchased a ticket like everyone else. A heavy silence fell. Nathan looked at the three flight attendants. Your actions yesterday reflected poor judgment and explicit bias. In many companies, that would be cause for immediate termination. Victoria, Daniel, and Megan braced for the inevitable. However, Nathan continued, firing you would solve nothing at a systemic level. It would just make us feel better temporarily while allowing the underlying culture to remain unchanged. He turned to address the entire room. Starting next week, Summit Airlines will implement a comprehensive anti-bias training program for all customer-facing staff. Additionally, we're revising our feedback system to specifically track incidents involving perceived discrimination. Sophia stepped forward. And the three of you, she said to the flight attendants, will be temporarily reassigned. 1 month working alongside our customer advocacy team, handling passenger complaints. Another month in economy service. After that, if your performance reviews indicate genuine understanding, you can reapply for your first-class positions. Patricia Winters found her voice. I'll personally oversee these changes, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, and I believe we should compensate the other passengers identified in your report. Nathan nodded. Then he addressed the flight attendants directly. This isn't about punishment. It's about understanding. The true measure of premium service isn't how well you treat people who look important. It's how you treat everyone, regardless of appearance. As the reality of the situation fully dawned, Board Chair Ella Simmons spoke up. I believe we owe Mrs. Carter our gratitude. She's identified a significant blind spot in our operation that could have continued damaging our reputation. This is an opportunity for meaningful change. Victoria, Daniel, and Megan sat in stunned silence, their earlier confidence shattered. Not by immediate firing, but by something perhaps more challenging, the opportunity to learn and change. Sophia Carter settled into seat 2A on Summit Airlines Flight 923 from Denver to San Francisco, dressed in the same dark gray sweatshirt, light gray sweatpants, and black cap. She opened her book, preparing for the 5-hour journey to a climate research conference. Good morning, Mrs. Carter, said a familiar voice. Can I offer you a beverage before takeoff? Sophia looked up to see Daniel standing beside her seat, professional, attentive, his eyes holding none of the condescension from their previous encounter. Instead, there was something that looked remarkably like respect. Just water for now, thank you, she replied. As Daniel placed the water on her armrest, he hesitated. Mrs. Carter, I'm not sure if you remember me. I remember you, Daniel. He nodded, acknowledging the impossibility of being forgotten. I wanted to thank you, he said quietly. These past 3 months have been educational. Sophia regarded him thoughtfully. How was your time in the customer advocacy team? Humbling, he admitted. I had no idea how many passengers felt dismissed or judged by our actions. Things I never even thought about. Little comments, assumptions. They noticed everything. People usually do, Sophia replied. Down the aisle, she spotted Megan assisting an elderly man in casual clothes, her manner patient and attentive as she helped him stow his worn duffel bag. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. The training program you and Mr. Carter implemented has changed things, Daniel continued. Not just procedures, but how we think about passengers, about people in general. I'm glad to hear that. Daniel straightened, returning to professional demeanor. Enjoy your flight, Mrs. Carter. If you need anything at all, I'm here to assist. As he moved to serve other passengers, Sophia noticed Victoria in the galley, efficiently preparing for takeoff. Their eyes met briefly, and Victoria gave a small, respectful nod. Not the exaggerated deference of someone afraid for their job, but the genuine acknowledgement between people who had moved past conflict to understanding. The changes at Summit Airlines extended far beyond these 3 flight attendants. The anti-bias program had been implemented company-wide. Customer satisfaction scores were climbing. Other airlines had taken notice, adopting Summit's approach as an industry model. As the flight reached cruising altitude, Sophia gazed out at the patchwork landscape below. She thought about how a single moment of injustice had catalyzed meaningful change, not through vengeance, but through education and accountability. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. How's the flight? She smiled and typed back. Different. Better.